Thank you all for being here, and I know it's a very, very special day, and I can assure you that I was not magna cum laude, did not major in physics, was not Phi Beta Kappa. Although I graduated, it was just barely, and I was in the half of the class that made the top half possible, so hey, look, it's a really special day for all of you, and there's some really momentous occasion for you and your family. It was 42 years ago, on 10 June 1980, I was in this very hall with my mother and father, and we were down that end of the hall. The 6 of us graduated and were commissioned second lieutenants. And it was this incredibly meaningful day for me and my family. And it was something that both my parents were both proud and not particularly happy about. Both were World War II veterans. My mother, both were enlisted. They hated officers. I see General Abizade over here. I see the good admiral here. A lot of officers in the crowd. You're about to become officers. So Mom was enlisted in the Navy, and she was in the Medical Service Corps for the Navy, serving out in Seattle during World War II. Took care of the wounded coming back from the Pacific. And my dad was with the 4th Marine Division in World War II and made the assault landings on Kwajalein, Saipan, Tinian, and Iwo Jima, and lived to talk about it. And he never liked officers. He particularly didn't like Marine officers, by the way. So I know we got a Marine down there. So, but I was always very proud of their service, and they were as well, even though they both saw some very, very difficult times. And World War II was such that all of the folks in my neighborhood, growing up in Boston, were all veterans of the war. So there were always stories about Bastogne or the Philippines or this battle or that battle. And the one thing I grew up with was the idea of service and paying back. And I was smart enough to realize that I was very, very fortunate, and I was more fortunate to come to a university such as Princeton. And I know that all of you feel the same way. So my hat is off to you, and my hat is off to your families for supporting you. And it's truly an emotional day. But let me say first, thanks to some folks that are in the room. First, President Eisgruber, who's been a tremendous supporter of this program. I've come back and done the commissioning. General Cavoli, who is also a Princeton grad, the 2 of us, similar to West Point, the 2 of us are the only 2 guys who ever made 4-star in Princeton history, along with Guthrie. There's 3 of us, I guess. So compared to General Abizade in his class, like had 33 or something in his class. So Cavoli and I alternate once in a while, coming back and forth to do this. And it's a great privilege and honor to be back here yet again. So Mr. President, my president, right? And I have many presidents, you're one of them. So I want to thank you for your leadership of the school, for the university, and your support to this program. This is what, the 103rd year, I think it is. What is it, 2019? I was in physics, so do the math. I think it's 103. I mean, it's a continuous, unbroken record with this program, and it's only because of you and the predecessors who've made this happen. Most of the Ivy League schools, not most, all except Princeton, got rid of it during the Vietnam War because of protests, the controversy, and all that. And then I come here in 1976, and at that time, Princeton offered for the Navy to come back, and the Navy said, no thanks. The Marines wanted no part of Princeton. And Air Force said, no thanks. But the Army said, okay. And Princeton laid the rules down. And they said, hey, look, if you're going to have ROTC here, you've got to obey the Princeton University rules. So you can't get your hair cut. You can't wear a uniform on campus. You can't militarize the campus. And you got to be hidden way down there in the old armory. So I thought it was pretty cool. So I had a big mustache, long hair. I looked like a Delta Force operator as a cadet at West Point. So it was great. But it's been an unbroken record, and it's only because of people like you. So thank you, President, for your support. And I also want to thank a personal friend who's here, who has been a mentor, a longtime friend. His son-in-law was my aide de camp at one point. I've known him and his family for years and years and years. Retired now is General John Abizade. He has served our nation extraordinarily well in peace and war. He wanted to come to Princeton, didn't get in, he had to go to West Point instead. So, but I got to tell you, General Abizade, a brilliant guy, brilliant soldier scholar, commanded Central Command at the height of the war in Iraq, and it's just done so much for our country. So thank you, General, for being here. And we've got two secretaries of the Army that are here, or civilian aides to the Secretary of the Army. They're representing the Secretary of the Army. And I want to thank you for doing what you do. That's a big job. We have them in every state. So thank you for being here and representing the Secretary of the Army, who couldn't be here right now, but I want to thank you for being here to represent her. And lastly, I just met this woman, Professor Pralinova. She is a professor of Imperial Russian history, born and raised in St. Petersburg, came to this country some time ago in 2006, I think it was, and she's been teaching here for quite a few years. Her husband and two children are here with her. Her family is still back in Russia, and I asked to see her because of the current situation in Ukraine. And she has unique insights, given that she is literally an expert in Russian history. And she did. I spent the last hour with her, and she gave me tremendous insights, and hopefully I'll keep that relationship going, because what she has to tell me is going to go right into the ears of some other people at the senior levels of our government. So, Professor, I don't know where you are. I know there you are, right down there. And one of your students is getting commissioned. So thank you, Professor, for spending time with me, and thank you for being here. You know, this is a remarkable group of people. They're your sons and daughters. You know them far better than I do. But before you are a group of 16 people, 15 going into the Army, one being commissioned in the Marines. They hail from 11 different states of the United States, 4 of whom are coming from New Jersey, by the way. All others are from singletons from other states. And I will tell you that most of them are Red Sox fans. They told me that in private conversation, so I appreciate everybody adopting the Red Sox nation. We've got 9 different branches represented here. You'll hear it when they get commissioned. But you got 3 going in the infantry, you got 4 going in engineers, and then 1 each in the field artillery, armor, aviation, MI, military police. You've got 1 going in cyber. So I think that's great. It's quite a distribution. And then, of course, into the Marines, which is a branch unto itself. So it's quite a diverse class, and their backgrounds are impressive. I asked them, and I spent a little bit of time with them earlier, asked them about their majors and their theses and all that. And I had 7 extensions on my thesis, in case anyone's wondering and wants to go look it up. And I did get it turned in time to make graduation, but barely. So we've got a couple of history majors, politics, English, several engineering students, a couple in the School of Public Affairs, 2 computer engineers, a chemistry, a pre-med, and 1 who studied robotics. There are a couple folks out here who actually came about 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, but most of these guys are 3.8, 3.7, 3.9, and 4.0 in the GPAs. I was hovering just slightly below the 3.0 mark. 2.0 and go, we called it back then. So, this is an extraordinarily bright group. I don't know how many are summa cum laude and magna cum laude, but there's a lot of cum laudes here, and it's very, very impressive. When I was asking about their thesis, I couldn't even understand some of the topics that they were talking about. Figuring out the geometry of the fuel going into the injection. I forget which one of you did that, but that was pretty impressive. And 2 of them built a jet engine. I mean, you built a jet engine as a college student. It didn't fly, though, just for the record. So I thought that was pretty impressive. One of them wrote about Ukraine, which was great. I'm going to get a copy of that thesis. Another wrote about counterinsurgency in Iraq. We'll get a copy of that thesis as well. We'll grade you out. And so very, very impressive group. Several athletes, rugby, lacrosse, and so on. So this is an incredibly talented group of people, exactly the type of people that we want to come into our Army and Marine Corps, into our service today. And several of them may or may not stay for a career. I had no intentions of staying for 42 years. My father was all ticked off. He said, look, I didn't go to college. Your mother didn't go to college. You're going to Princeton. You're supposed to go to Wall Street. You're supposed to make money. What the hell are you doing? I hit the beach at Iwo Jima. What's wrong with you? Are you out of your mind? And then when I go infantry and go to airborne school, he said, you're crazy. Everybody I knew that was in airborne are in Normandy. They're all dead. "What's wrong with you? You got psychological issues or something?" I said, "Dad, I just want to serve my country." So that was a little bit of the great Santini back then, right? But I can tell you that I never had, and I don't think any of us do actually. I would say General Abizaid did, and most people who stay for 20, 30, 40 years don't really intend to do that, especially at the beginning. And most of us think we'll do our payback, our ROTC commitment, spend 3 or 4 years of service, 5 years if you go to West Point, then get out and go to law school, business school, or go whatever. But some of us decide to stay. No matter where you go, it doesn't matter if you spend 20, 30, 40 years in uniform. It doesn't matter if you decide to become a lawyer or a doctor or a professor, university president. It doesn't matter where you go. The only thing that matters is that you pay back. You pay back in some way of service to others. The motto of the school, Princeton, the nation's service, when I was here, I think it's changed to Princeton, the global service, but pre-law, pre-med. So, but the idea is service, right? And that is what they are doing. They're dedicating their lives to the service of others, in this case by donning the cloth of our nation in our uniform. And they're doing that at a time, as the president said, they're doing it at a time of great international stress. And I suppose the international system's always at stress, but the war that my parents fought in World War II, that ended in 1945, as you all know. And between 1914, the beginning of World War I in August, and 1945, in that 30 years, about 150 million people were slaughtered in the conduct of great power war. Think about that. 150 million people were slaughtered between 1914 and 1945 in great power war. And I would argue that the people in August 1914 thought the war would be over very quickly, 4 or 5 months, war of maneuver, bogs down into trenches, and then they have this battle of attrition for the next 4 years, cost 20 million lives in World War I. And that sets the conditions for the most violent war in human history, World War II. And it's unbelievable, the amount of death, destruction, etc. And what you're seeing today play out in Ukraine is a direct descendant of how World War II ended. And in fact, I would argue that what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, in fact, our entire lives have been shaped by those two wars. And in 1945, in beginning really in 1944 up in New Hampshire, at Bretton Woods at a hotel, the diplomats of the powers got together, about 400 of them, and they all came up with the rules. They literally sat there in a hotel for about 6 weeks with old Smith Corona typewriters, and they wrote the rules by which we live today. And one part of the world didn't like those rules, the communist bloc under Joe Stalin, and they broke off. They formed the communist bloc, the Warsaw Pact. They built a wall, and that became the Cold War. And that wall came down in 1991. And then those rules that were written back in New Hampshire in 1944-45, they became the rules of the whole world. And those are the rules that govern the world today, right this minute. And that is what's called in the newspapers the liberal, rules-based global international order, for what it's worth. That's out there. The institutions that govern us on a day-to-day basis and in our interactions in the world. And it's a rules-based because it's based on law. And that system has lasted for 78 years, 77 years, over almost 8 decades. That system has lasted. And that system is under very intense stress right this minute as we speak. It's been under stress for some time, maybe a decade or more, but it's under intense stress right now. There's 2 previous systems that existed in European history, one from 1648 to the mid-1700s with the Treaty of Westphalia. And that set up the international system at the end of the 30 Years' War. That lasted about 100 years or so. And that broke down in the 7 Years' War in the middle of Europe in the 1750s, which directly led to the American Revolution and the French Revolution, which then directly led to the Napoleonic Wars, which were 20 years of bloodletting across all of Europe, a continental-wide war, and in fact, a global war. And that ended with the Concert of Europe, which was a peace agreement that set up the balance of power on the European continent. That lasted about 100 years. And it broke down in the summer of 1914, which led to World Wars I and II. We're in year 78, 77, depending on how you want to count it. Think about that. And right now, as we speak, as we sit here at Princeton University, that system is under intense stress. What you are seeing happening right now in the Ukraine is a gross violation of that system in which a power, Russia, has illegally invaded a smaller country, Ukraine, for the purpose of self-aggrandizement and taking it over. There's no excuse for what they did. They violated all the rules that were set in 1945, and it's in gross violation of that rule set. If that is allowed to stand, then that rule set's going out the window. And if that rule set goes out the window, then you need to stand by, because it will get really ugly in the years to come. So it's really important that that rule set stay in place. It's really important that that rule set be reinforced day in and day out. It's to everyone's advantage. It's to the entire world's advantage. And that, in a nutshell, is what is at stake. And you are walking into a world right now, coming out of 20 years of insurgency warfare in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and we're walking into a world where now we not only have great power competition, we also have the risk, and I'm not making a prediction on what will happen, but we have the risk of great power war. And it's incumbent upon us, people like me, but also now you, to ensure that the great power peace of 1945 holds, and we pass it on to the next generation. You've got a rising China, you've got a revanchist Russia, you still have a very malign influence Iran out there developing nuclear weapons, you've got North Korea that's problematic from time to time. But the two great powers with China and Russia are very, very significant. And I would argue that for the entire time you're in the military, and probably all of your adult life, you're going to be dealing with that. And we need to keep it on the side of peace, stability, and not on the side of a great power war. To just think about what a great power war means. Think back to the fall of 1918, when the United States Army is conducting an offensive in the Meuse-Argonne. In 6 weeks, in only 6 weeks, 26,000 American soldiers were killed in action in the Meuse-Argonne in 6 weeks. If you look at World War II, we attacked or do the assault landings at Normandy, where my uncle was, in 6 June 1944. It takes about 8 weeks to get to Paris. In those 8 weeks, 26,000 American soldiers, airmen, and sailors are killed in action in those 8 weeks. And that's just the Normandy campaign. Then my father's over in the Pacific in the Marianas campaign. There's another campaign in China, Burma, India. Then there's a campaign in the Philippines. Then there's the Battle of the Atlantic. In all together, in those 8 weeks in World War II, the summer 1944, 58,000 American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines were killed in action. And that's just the Americans. That doesn't count the Germans, the Japanese, the British, the Canadians, the Russians, etc. 58,000 Americans. That's great power war. And that'll bring you to your knees. That'll bring the world to its knees. And it's incumbent upon you and I, those of us in uniform, to protect this group out here. And we will do that no matter what the cost to ourselves. You are entering not a job, you're entering a calling. You're entering something that could require tremendous sacrifice on your behalf. You're already making a commitment to that, and you could be in a situation where it's tremendously costly. There in a few minutes, they're going to take the oath, and I'll administer them collectively. Their oath to, as the President said, to the Constitution. It's the same oath that the President of the United States takes, that the Supreme Court justices take. I just administered the oath the other day to all the cadets at West Point. Tomorrow I'm going to go up and administer the same oath to the graduating ROTC cadets at Harvard and Tufts and a few other schools up in the Boston area. This is the same oath that every congressman and senator take. It's the same oath that many, many people in the U.S. government take. But there's only one group of people who take this oath, who are saying by taking this oath that they're willing to die. Every one of them, and me, and every one of you who's ever served, when you took that oath, you said you're willing to die. You are willing to die to preserve something. And that something is the U.S. Constitution, that we can never, ever, under any circumstance, turn our back on. That is an unbelievably special document. And it's more than a document. It's an idea. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in combination is the idea that is America. And we are, in fact, a special country. And the idea that you're willing to fight for, the idea that you're willing to lose an arm or an eye or a leg or separate from your family from, the idea that you're willing to die from, is an extraordinarily powerful idea. It's the idea that defeated Britain in our Revolutionary War. It's the idea that defeated the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese. It's the idea that brought the wall down and defeated Soviet communism. It's the idea that Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the Taliban and Al-Shabaab and all the terrorist groups, they hate this idea. So what is this idea that is in this Constitution that is so powerful that other countries try to emulate it and so many fear it? We have people in this country who try to fear it. We have people who try to overturn it right inside our own country. And what this idea says is that you and I, no matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're a male or you're a female. It doesn't matter if you're gay or you're straight or something in between. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're black, you're white, you're Asian, you're Indian. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter what country you came from. It doesn't matter the last name. It doesn't matter your place of origin. It doesn't matter whether you're tall or short. None of that matters. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, went to Princeton, or doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you went to college at all. What it says is that every single one of us is born free and equal, and every single one of us is an American. And you're going to rise or you're going to fall based on your perseverance, your hard work, your knowledge, your skills, your attributes. And you're going to be judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin. That's the very essence. And we hold these truths to be self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident that every one of us is equal, and every one of us has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You're taking an oath to that idea. You're not taking an oath to a person. You're never to take an oath to a president, a king, a queen. You're not taking an oath to a dictator or a wannabe dictator or a tyrant. You're taking an oath to an idea, the idea that is America. And you will do anything and everything, if necessary, to sacrifice even your life to preserve that idea and pass it on unscathed to the next generation. That is what you're doing today. You're committing that. You're committing your lives and your fortune to it. And I want to congratulate you. I'm extraordinarily proud of each and every one of you. I know your family is, and I know this country is. So thank you very much.